Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and today I have got a massive Indiana State book haul for you. I guess technically a little bit of this book haul was in Kentucky, but only a tiny bit. Most of this was all in Indiana. I recently had the chance to go speak at a summer camp in Indiana, and while I was there, I definitely checked out some different used bookstores. I went to a used bookstore in Muncie, Indiana, and one in Huntington, Indiana, as well as a couple around Indianapolis. So I want to show you all the books I found. One of the stores was having a 50% off all marked prices except for a few things behind the counter, and everything else was marked 50% off. So I definitely stacked up on some books because books that were normally priced at like $2 were $1. Books that are like really nice hardcovers for $5 were like $2.50. It was amazing, and I'm going to show you all the stuff. There's a little bit of everything in here. Now, I did find some Goosebumps books, so I'm going to save those, though, for my next Goosebumps Quest for the 62 video, which will be episode 4. So definitely keep your eye out for that. But for now, here's everything else I found, from like spooky middle grade books to fantasy books to some nostalgic movie tie-in books. I've got a little bit of everything, so let's dive right in. So first up, I found another book in the Young Indiana Jones series. Now, I recently discovered that there are 2 Young Indiana Jones series. One of them, this one, is original stories created in a series. And the other one is created based on episodes from the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles television show. Now, I gotta admit, I think that show was not that great, but these standalone ones are kind of fun. So this one is Young Indiana Jones and the Ghostly Riders, book number 7 in the series. And this one was written by William McKay. So this one looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait to read it and see what happens. And then these books are getting hard to find, but I found another one. I found book number 2 in the Clue series, The Secret Passage. This one is, these are a bunch of different short stories that are like short mysteries. So you read the mystery and you get all the clues while you're reading the mystery, and then you have to solve who did the crime. And then the solution is printed upside down on the following page after the story. So it's a lot of fun to read these and like try and solve it yourself. See if you can figure out who was where, what was happening, and what weapons were available and different things like that, who had the motive. And so these are a lot of fun, and they're getting so hard to find. But this one I picked up on this trip. And then this one was a fun find. I was super excited about this. I found an R.L. Stine book. It's one of his young adult horror books. And this one is The Dead Girlfriend by R.L. Stine. This cover is a little shiny, so I'm trying to show it in a way that you can see what's actually on the cover. But so this one, it looks really spooky, looks a lot of fun. And it's not in, as far as I can tell, it's not a Fear Street book. It's not in any of those series. It's a standalone book. And then I found 3 books in the Shivers series that I did not have. So the first one I found was book number 2, A Ghastly Shade of Green. I just love these covers. I think they're so much fun. And this one looks like it could be a lot of fun. So I was super excited to find this. It's in pretty good condition, actually, which I was really happy about. So that is book number 2 in the Shivers series. And then I also found book number 3, Ghost Rider. I did not have this one. A lot of people have read this one and really liked it, so I'm excited to read this book, see what happens in it. And then this one I have been told multiple times, this is the Shivers book I need to read. So it'll probably go on my list pretty soon here of books to read, and that is book number 4, The Animal Rebellion. It has a very animals taking over the farm kind of vibe, I guess. So I'm intrigued. I think it could be really interesting. And then I found a few standalone, kind of thriller, sort of spooky books. So the first one I got was Journey into Terror by Bill Wallace. And this one sounds a little more like a thriller than a horror book, as far as I can tell. I don't know if there's going to be more to it once I start reading it, but it's basically about these 2 boys are on vacation. They accidentally take a photograph of a plane that they should not have taken a photograph of, and suddenly there are people chasing them through the woods. So we'll see what this is about. It sounds kind of interesting, so I'll have to check it out. And then this one looked really intriguing to me, and kind of like that old 90s this is like a classic 90s kids book like trope, but this book is called The Secret Room Downstairs by Ruth Willock. And this book is all about this girl who moves in with her grandma, and then she discovers there's a ghost living downstairs who's from like the Pilgrim era, and the ghost has something it needs or something, so the girl has to try and figure it out. So this looks like a lot of fun. It's definitely, like I said, such a 90s trope for kids' books at this time, but it looks a lot of fun. And then I had never heard of this series at all. I actually like Todd Strasser books. I've read a few of his Help I'm Trapped books. And so this one is book number 3 in Camp Runamuk, Chopped Up Birdie's Feet. So it seems like kind of a gross out sort of book, which is also totally 90s. But I'm intrigued to read this and see what is going on at Camp Runamuk. And then this is book number 3 in the My Babysitter is a Vampire series, and that is My Babysitter Bites Again. I saw this cover and I thought, that is such a great 90s cover. I don't have any of the other books in the series yet, so I'm gonna have to find those, but this definitely looks real intriguing to me. And then this is a book by Betsy Byers that I had never heard of before, and it looks really interesting. It's called Mick Mummy, and it's about like a plant mummy? I don't even know. I don't know why it's Mick Mummy. I have no idea. I am not sure what happens in this book, but the cover was so intriguing. And basically reading the back, I was like, what is this? A plant mummy? Have to read it to find out. And then I found another book in the Graveyard School series. I recently read one of these, Don't Eat the Mystery Meat, and I enjoyed that book quite a bit, actually. So this is book number 8, Let's Scare the Teacher to Death by Tom B. Stone. I think this one seems a little odd, but we'll see what happens. The first one I thought was going to be kind of gross, and it actually ended up surprising me with how much I liked it. So we'll have to go ahead and read this one and see what happens. And then I found 2 books in the Dead Time Stories series that I did not have. The first one I found was number 1, Terror in Tiny Town. So I'm super excited that I got book 1. I haven't read any books in this series yet, so I wanted to read number 1 first. And so I'm excited to dive in. This series is an anthology series from what I can tell. It doesn't build on itself like Graveyard School does or any of those. So I'm excited to read this and really see what this Dead Time Stories series is like. And then I found another Dead Time Stories book. This is number 8, Grave Secrets, which this cover is wild. I do not know what's happening on this cover, and I will have to find out. And then for a complete change of pace, I found some fantasy books that I was super excited to find. The first one I found was a 1980s edition of the Warlords of Nin by Stephen R. Lawhead, which is book 2 in the Dragon King trilogy. So I am excited to have this one because I've only had book 1 and book 3. So I've always been waiting to read this series because I didn't have book 2. Now I've got book 2. So I'm super excited to read this. Stephen Lawhead writes a lot of like high medieval fantasy, so this should be a lot of fun to read. And then I found another book in the Kingdom Keeper series, and this was one of those hardcovers I found at that store during the 50% off sale. And this is book number 6 in the original Kingdom Keeper series, and this one is called Dark Passage. So I'm excited. This was a pretty nice hardback edition of this, so I was really excited. I only paid like $2.50 for it. So I was real excited about that. And then I also found a Kingdom Keepers The Return series, which I don't have any of these yet. Now I have one of them, but I didn't have any yet. And this is book number 2, Legacy of Secrets. So this is like a sequel series to the Kingdom Keepers series, and I'm real intrigued by this book. It seems kind of interesting. I'm curious who all these characters are going to end up being. I couldn't tell if that's supposed to be Tia Dalma, but I don't know what this dog is. So I'm intrigued. I haven't gotten this far in the series yet. I've read the first 3 books, so I'm on book 4. So gonna have to read it. And then I was super excited to find this because I just recently discovered this series. It's a Shadow Mountain series, which if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that Shadow Mountain books, I really enjoy them. So I found this one. It's book number 1 in this series. I found book number 3 recently. So I was super excited to find book 1. And that is book 1 in the Cragbridge Hall series, The Inventor Secret by Chad Morris. So this one does have that little tiny tear there, but this I got at a super good price at Half Price Books. It was in the clearance section. So I snatched it up when I saw it, so I'm really excited to have it now, and I got to read this one, then I'll have to find book 2, and then I can read book 3. And then I've had the first 2 books in this series for a very long time, and I never could find book 3, but I finally found it. And this is book 3 in the Magician trilogy by Ginny Nimmo, and this is called The Chestnut Soldier. This is a very shiny cover, so I'm trying to hold it so you can see it. It's really cool looking, though, all that shimmering, like kind of, I don't know even what that's called, but the shimmering colors on it are really awesome. So I'm super intrigued now. I can finally read this trilogy and see what happens. And then I found a book by G.P. Taylor that I did not have. He writes really kind of out there fiction. Some of it is labeled Christian fiction, which I don't know if I would give it the label Christian fiction necessarily, but it's super intriguing. And this is a British edition of this book, and it is called The Curse of Salamander Street. And this is the sequel to a book called Shadowmancer, which G.P. Taylor wrote. So I am real intrigued to read this book. It seems really awesome. I love this cover. I think it looks really great. So we'll see what I think of it. And then I couldn't pass up some more Murder, She Wrote books. So I found a few, and I was excited to find these ones because I hadn't really seen these in other places, but these were 3 that were on my list of ones that I kind of want to read and looked interesting to me. So the first one was Dying to Retire, which I was trying to find where the skull is on this one, because in every single cover, there's usually a skull shape somewhere, but I don't see it on this one, so maybe this one doesn't have one. Usually they do. But these are all based on the Murder, She Wrote show. They're written by Jessica Fletcher, but really written by Donald Bain. So I'm excited to read this one. The next Murder, She Wrote book I got was Majoring in Murder, which you can see the skull's right there on that one. So the skull's got to be in that other one somewhere. If you saw it, put it in the comments down below. So this one is Majoring in Murder, where Jessica's teaching at a college and a murder happens. Typical, but it's fun. And then the last Murder, She Wrote book I got was A Vote for Murder. And this one is like a political thriller for Murder, She Wrote, which sounds kind of interesting to me. So I'm intrigued by this one. Again, I don't see the skull on this one. That's interesting. I thought they all had one, but I don't see one on this cover. So oh well. And then I now have a complete set of these books. I found a copy of Walt Disney's Annette, and this is the last one I needed, Sierra Summer, which this one is very pink and has that great, it's like a very 1960s pink, which is kind of awesome. So I'm excited to read this one. The one I read of this series, the Annette and the Mystery at Smuggler's Cove, was really pretty good. It had kind of a Nancy Drew vibe, but with a lot of like kind of nostalgic 1960s. Like this is really mired in the 1960s and kind of that whole scene and that whole vibe. So I'm excited to read this one, see what happens. And then I found 3 more Berenstain Bear books. I have someone put on one of my comments that I need to do the Berenstain Bears Accept No Substitutes, but I don't have a copy of it yet. So I've been on the hunt. Every place I go, I am searching for that book. I am on the hunt for it. But I found 3 other ones, and one of them is very special to me. And this one is the first Berenstain Bears book that I ever had back in the day. I actually had a ton of Berenstain Bear books when I was growing up in elementary school, and it was my decision, but I chose to sell a bunch of them at a yard sale, and I highly regret it because I had some rare ones. But the first one I ever got was this one from my Aunt Molly, who sent it to me, and that is The Berenstain Bears Gotta Dance. This was the first one I ever had, and now I have it again, and I'm so excited to have this one once again. So I remember this one really well. I'm pretty sure I've read it multiple times, but I'm excited to have it once again. And then I also picked up a copy of the Berenstain Bears and the Showdown at Chainsaw Gap. So this one is an environmental kind of story, which is really interesting for Berenstain Bears. So I'm intrigued to read this one again. And then the last one I got was actually a Berenstain Bear Scouts book. And this is the Berenstain Bear Scouts and the Sci-Fi Pizza. So this one is wild. I actually do remember this one. I had this one back in the day and I read it and I remember it, and it is a wild story. And then I found a few other Christian books. So these are all from different Christian series. The first one is a series I didn't even know existed. I'm finding out about so many different series. The more I like to go on these hunts and searches for different books and I spot things, I'm like, ooh, what is this? I never heard of that. So this is book number 1 in the Baker Street Mysteries by Jake and Luke Taney. And this is the mystery of the yellow hands. I know nothing about this series. Obviously, it's a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. So we'll have to see. And then I also picked up another book in the Incredible Worlds of Wally McDougall. And this is book number 28, My Life as a Supersized Superhero with Slobber. So these books are so wild. I don't even know, but this looks like another entry in this very odd series. And then I also found a book I have been searching for a very long time, and that is the book number 2 in the Seven Sleepers, The Lost Chronicles series, The Savage Game of Lord Zerich by Gilbert Morris. So this is a sequel series to the Seven Sleepers series, which I have read 6 of those books so far. There are 10 in the original series, and I believe there's 7 in this series, which if there are 7, I've got them all now. But there might be 10. I don't totally remember off the top of my head. I'll have to check. But I'm excited to finally have book number 2. I've been hunting for this one forever, and now I've got it. And then I found another Bloodhounds book by Bill Myers, and this is Bloodhounds, Inc., book number 4, Invasion of the UFOs. So I have not read any of these yet, but they look so random to me. I will have to read them, and I will definitely let you know what I think about them. And then I found book number okay, so this is technically when it came out. This was book number 2. But now it's book number 3 in the new continuity of this series because new books have been added to the series. And this is book number 2/3 in the Last Chance Detective series, The Legend of the Desert Bigfoot. So these were based on a show that came out in the 1990s. There were 3 episodes and they wrote novelizations of each of the shows. I read the first book actually and I really enjoyed it. It was pretty good. So this one is book number 2 and /3 in the total series now, but this one's based on the 2nd episode. So I remember a bit about this and I remember the twist of this book for sure, like the answer to the mystery, but it was a wild ride from what I remember, and I am excited to read it again. And then last, but certainly not least, I finally have a copy of it. I had ordered this a while ago when I saw the price drop dramatically online, so I snagged this as fast as I could. And so I bought a copy of book number 2 in the Exitor Adventures, and this one is one of my favorites by Peggy Downing, Segra, and Stargull. This is a fantasy series from the 1980s that is super hard to find, but I finally have a full set. This book had been going for like $200 plus online, and I finally saw someone list one for like $11. So I jumped on it as fast as I could because I really wanted a complete set. I actually did not know after I had a previous copy of this book that was a library copy from a university if I would ever get to hold a copy of this book again because of how expensive it is. And now I've got a copy and I'm so happy, so excited about that. So those were all the books I found in Indiana. Well, not all of them because there is quite a stack of Goosebumps books I found. I'm getting closer to completing my collection. I found a couple more. One of them I'm really excited I found because it's one that everyone's been telling me, you gotta read that one, and I haven't read it yet. So you be watching for that 4th episode of the Quest for the 62 to find out what Goosebumps books I found. Plus I found some others in not just the original series, but I found a Give Yourself Goosebumps and some Goosebumps Presents, which I did not have any of those previous to this. And now I've got 4 of them. So Find out more about that in that episode. And until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.